Rex Crowell, welcome to the Game Informer Show, sir.
Hello.
It's an honor to have you on the show.
Oh, well, it's super nice to be here.
You're very lovely. You're very artistic. You seem to have absolutely everything going for you, and now you're fully independent as well.
Well, you know, it's an interesting new adventure. Yeah.
Well, what's it been like? Walk me through like a day in your life these days.
So my days are pretty simple now. I don't go anywhere. I work from home. To be honest, I find that if you work from home, you actually do need to go somewhere. So I kind of trick myself and I get up every morning and I go for an hour's walk in a big circle and I come back home and I'm like, I'm at the office. And then I feel like I'm properly set up to actually start building stuff. So I'm just here with my cats. My girlfriend, who's also a game designer, she goes off and has her day off creating her universe.
Okay.
She actually works on Dreams. So.
Oh, the wonderful connection. All right, because that was a crazy thing. So I don't know if you saw it, but yeah, we launched our Dreams cover story this week. And it was fun, like walking around the halls of Media Molecule, because in the stairwell, as I'm sure you know, there are Post-it notes everywhere saying goodbye to Rex. I think some say, come back, Rex. Another one says, you're free. I think they miss you over there, man.
Well, I'm just very easy to draw, I think. Anyone can. I'm kind of like video games, I don't know, Adolf Hitler or something, just for being visually distinctive.
You got to claim something. Just plant your flag in that. Can we talk a little bit about...
Not in any other way.
Good way to start the interview, dude. Let's talk about Knights and Bikes. No, so I'm curious if you can just kind of like set the scene for Guildford in general. I feel like it's a name that a lot of people, especially in the States, don't know. But if you're a fan of video games, you should know about this relatively small British town. Can you just explain what's happening in this town, who's all there, the history of this town?
Well, it's kind of quite a small town. To be honest, you don't sort of walk there and just immediately see like video games everywhere.
Yeah.
As a child, I grew up like in a very rural part in the very corner of the UK. And I dreamt of going to Guildford because that's where Bullfrog were with Peter Molyneux.
Yeah.
Making these incredible games. And I was just so desperate to go and visit it. And when I finally got there years later, I was like, is this it? Because, it's just, you kind of imagine that just there's video games being created, just like, I don't know, every window you look in,
right,
there's going to be a game being created. And it's kind of tucked away. But there has been this great lineage of studios from Bullfrog and then Mucky Foot and Lionhead and who else?
Criterion, Hello Games.
Criterion, exactly. I mean, it's just kept on going. I mean, because games are all about the people that make them. So, just having that concentration of very talented people in one place just meant that that lineage has just carried on and people have split off and made their own studios and so it's continued.
Yeah, talking to Siobhan and people at Media Molecule about why Guildford is such a hotbed for the game industry, their explanation at least was, it's just the Bullfrog explosion. Like Bullfrog had so much talent, and once that studio exploded, then it was just like a supernova for that small British town, and now it's just, if you add up the amount of money that town has generated just from the video game industry, it is mind-boggling. And this is where I get really freaked out, is we had like, a little bit of free time in Guildford. Went to the Guildford Museum. Lovely. Tiny little museum there. There's not even a shrine to video games. Like, that is...
I've never been in there. I mean, it just looks like a shed.
Yeah, it's a shed. But half that shed should be dedicated to how much like impact culturally has been generated from Guildford in this industry. And instead they're talking about floods and wheat or whatever, it's fine. But I feel like that museum needs to celebrate what's actually incredibly notable at this small British town.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Guildford itself tends to talk mostly about the fact that The Omen was filmed there in the 70s.
Yeah, so, who gives a
no? I mean, that's a cool bit of pop culture, it's kind of a nice little fact, but there's been a lot going on in the last 30 years since.
Yeah. They're obsessed with the fact that Lewis Carroll had a summer home there. When it's like, do you understand the amount of talent that is living in this city right now and you're not acknowledging it? Anyways, that's enough about that museum. But speaking of the Bullfrog explosion, you got your start at Lionhead then?
Yes, yeah, long ago, long ago.
What era was that?
That would have been, it was immediately after Black and White, the original one.
Yeah.
I was working in TV, to be honest. I had no thought that I was going to end up in video games. And I just got hired to work on their website for a month, and I never left. Well, I did originally, I did finally, but I was there for a long time. I think they had a Paulie Mack, who was the Paul McLaughlin, who was the art director there. He just hired just incredible people. Really brought in a lot of artistic talents that weren't necessarily the people that were getting hired at the time. We were, a lot of us were not necessarily that technical. But he could see the sort of crazy ideas that a lot of us had, and was just prepared to train us all up. So people like also Kareem, art director at Media Molecule, he was hired around the same sort of time, and we used to just hang out and talk about art all the time. And he's just an incredible artist, but not someone that was like getting a job in the games industry at the time.
That's inconceivable. What project were you most proud of from your time at Lionhead?
I mean, there's all the unreleased ones.
Ooh, go on.
There were so many. That's quite hard to say. I mean, I worked a lot on the movies.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if anyone remembers that game, but it was about running a movie studio. Very classic Bullfrog style, top-down perspective. And it felt like it was kind of ahead of its time. It was ahead of UGC. It was ahead of YouTube. You made, as well as running your movie lot, you actually built your movies. You assigned actors and you gave them scenes to play out, and you dressed them up in costumes. You're kind of making machinima before there was machinima. And it's kind of a shame that it was just a bit too early, I think. There was nowhere that you could actually share your videos at the time.
Is there still a community for the movies? Are people sharing stuff now?
I think so, yeah. I mean, obviously YouTube came along later, and some of the super fans that were still playing it, they worked out ways to upload stuff to YouTube, so you can see some crazy stuff on there.
Yeah.
I think you can find out the bizarre end credit sequence that I filmed for the game, which you only got to see if you completed it. Like showing all of the entire dev team, but all filmed as like tiny little vignettes of like classic movies, and it was just a fun thing to do in like 2 lunchtimes, and we really kind of washed it together very quickly.
I love that. It's interesting to think of that, and then I just went back and played the opening of LittleBigPlanet 1 again, and especially after visiting the studio, it's so amazing just shoving your guys' faces into the opening of that game, that opening credits. Why do you think that's important? Why have you done that repeatedly in your career, of just showing the developers more and more in the game?
Well, I think sometimes the development process is like hidden away. That there isn't necessarily, particularly before like social media and Twitter and Twitch and streaming and all of these things, like developers were much more separated from the audience. So it's nice to like just go, well, this game was made by Siobhan and Mark and Kareem and, just a bunch of friends who all worked really hard to make this thing for you, and we hope you enjoy it. And it kind of breaks some of the kind of very serious, giant Hollywood style opening credits. Just makes it a bit more personal, really.
It seems the industry is getting better at that, and I wonder how much of it is just having a direct line of communication with developers on Twitter. Like, nothing's better than seeing a developer talk about what they're proud of on Twitter, or just acknowledging the amount of sacrifice that goes into each and every game. But I feel like the wider gaming audience is appreciating that more and more, and I always love it. Like when a game starts and it just starts with like a thank you for playing our game message, let alone ends with that. It humanizes things so much. It's great.
Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, everyone does put their heart and soul into what they're making. I mean, even like a terrible game, someone has really, really slaved on that to work as hard as they possibly could. So it's all very heartfelt.
Yeah. Just on the Lionhead front, real quick, you worked on Fable a fair amount as well, right?
A little bit, yeah.
A little
Yeah, I
bit.
was more on the kind of, I made this really weird website for it, which was like a kind of, like a pop-up book, um, almost like a proto version of Tearaway, much later. But yeah, it was all like paper cutouts, and you pulled tabs, and you decided whether you were good or evil. But yeah, I worked a little bit on the UI and some of those elements. But most of that period, I was actually on the movies.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess the same
Yeah,
period there.
yeah, yeah,
Jim,
yeah.
what do you want from a new Fable game that Microsoft is heavily, heavily, heavily rumored to be making right now?
I don't know. It'd be kind of interesting if it was set in a completely different time period.
Yeah.
I loved Everyone's Gone to the Rapture. The way that they'd got contemporary English village life. So like a contemporary magical realism version of Fable would be kind of interesting.
That's a fun
where
idea. Yeah.
it's like everyone's driving around in cars using mobile phones, but is there magic there?
That's fun.
There's sort of strange things happening under the surface.
I can already hear fans rioting in the streets saying, "We don't want this. That's not my Fable. What are you
Well,
doing?"
that's why I'm not making that project that probably doesn't exist.
Indeed. What? So, Media Molecule, your time there. How long were you there exactly?
A bit over 10 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
struck me about just thinking about the history of Media Molecule and then visiting there for a couple of days for the Dreams cover story trip is just like, man, what a tone. Like, it's so interesting and unique for a studio to set a distinct tone within those halls, like we are the artsy creative studio and it's feel good vibes. It has a personality focused kind of vibe going around. How important or challenging do you think that is to like set a tone within a studio and maintain it like that?
I think, yeah, it's definitely challenging. I think it's easier when you have you're starting from a very small beginning, and you can really define the style like very directly and very boldly right at the start. When you don't have to like communicate it to like loads of people, you can really work on it together. And I didn't have to like pitch the idea of it being a pink company to like too many people. It was just like Siobhan and Mark and Kareem and Dave and Alex.
Was it really you saying you want pink?
Huh?
How did that come about? Why did you want pink?
Just because every game studio at the time was taking itself so seriously. It was the kind of PS3 era with the like Spider-Man font, and everything was very like black and chrome, and everyone was called like Chiseled Rock Studio or something like that. And it felt that if we're going to make something playful and something joyful, we should maybe make it more colorful. I think now every studio's got like wacky names and wacky colors and stuff like that. But this was kind of all predating the much smaller indie studios, and it stood out.
Yeah, and then once that small group has kind of like set that tone, it just kind of snowballs from there. Even though Media Molecule has ballooned up, it's still, we understand the tone because we know LittleBigPlanet.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that tone comes from all the founders of the studio. So, I think there's sometimes the challenge is obviously like, making sure that can completely be absorbed by everyone that's come along and hasn't necessarily experienced all the lineage, but it still like really makes sense to them, and they don't feel like they're having to like put on a specific like almost uniform to become a cartoon character. It's still somewhere where you go to work and you do serious work and you're working on your craft.
Yeah. Well, thinking about LittleBigPlanet and like the impact it had on the industry, obviously UGC is huge. But then even just thinking about Nintendo in the last 5 or so years with like, I guess more than that, but going back to like Epic Yarn, even the Kirby on Wii U had that clay vibe, and even Yarn Yoshi, whatever they renamed it to at this point. What do you think that is?
Yeah.
Why are people at this point interested in like a more tangible feel in their video games? I guess you could rope Cuphead into some degree too, but just feeling that distinct texture coming off your TV screen. Why are people attracted to that?
I think again, it's getting back to something it's something very believable. It's something how it's going to react, so how I don't know, a world of yarn, how that's going to react to you, you know, how it's going to sort of like squidge and move and what have you. But then it can surprise you as well, because you're not literally playing a like a Yoshi game that's just made out of yarn. It's just yarn sitting on the table. You know, this is a magical world made of yarn. So it's surprising how they take a material that you know so well, and how they develop it and animate it and bring it to life and come up with gameplay that uses it. And that's, you know, like very much what we were trying to do on Tearaway as well, with papercraft, and really model a material and like focus in on what makes it unique, so that then you can surprise all players that get to touch it and to explore a world made out of it.
Yeah, it just takes care of a little bit of the communication to the players about what they're looking at. You don't have to set up entirely the world, when you can fill in some gaps based on, I understand crafts. We're done here.
Also, like, as developers, it really focuses your ideas and makes you think differently as well.
Yeah.
Because, like, I don't really remember the yarn game that well, but you know, things like spike pits are like really hard to do when you've suddenly got a material that it doesn't make sense to have spike pits. So then you have to be more creative of like, well, what's the hazard going to be? What are you trying to avoid? What are the bad guys in this? What's the like evil material in this world? And it just, I don't know. It's a more, just stimulates you more,
right.
to have those constraints to push against all of the time.
Do you ever get tempted to like go and revolt against this lovely, charming vibe that you really personify, and I feel like Media Molecules games also personify? Do you ever just want to make like a bloody brawler or something just to shatter out of this mold that you feel like you're in?
Totally.
Really?
Yep. Big time. Oh yeah. I really want to make my punk game. Yeah.
What would that be like?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think just because you've been known for quite charming games, doesn't mean that I just want to like have a hard day making charming games and then just finish and play another charming game. You know, sometimes I really want some Hotline Miami. I mean, that's one of my favorite games of all time. So, you know, I really enjoy that kind of that vibe. I think games that just really know exactly what they are and really double down on the atmosphere, on the soundtrack, on the mechanics, to just really, whether it's a very visceral game or whether it's a very tactile, charming game, just something that has a really clear vision is really important to me.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, it's a good take. I mean, Knights and Bikes has a lovely vision. It seems very focused. What was the early process of that like, for trying to nail like, this is the tone we want to hit?
So that was trying to work on quite a sort of hand-painted look, so that essentially, because the game is about two girls who are having an adventure, exploring an island and what have you, some of which is in their imagination, some of which is the sort of more down-to-earth 80s English tourist island that they're on. So the art style was playing on how could we make the world look slightly like you're seeing it through their eyes as well. So the hand-painted style is semi sort of representing their way of looking at the world, and how they're like adding to it with their imagination, and how they're sort of like slightly warping things and putting their own sort of like more fantastical spin onto it.
Yeah. It feels a little bit like Costume Quest from Double Fine in that way, but a more focused artistic version of it, perhaps.
Yeah. Well, you know, we're being published by Double Fine, so that definitely made sense to hook up with them.
It all works out. Yeah. Double Fine publishing it. I'm curious, like, leaving Media Molecule after you've been in the industry for so long, what have you learned about the game industry from the Knights and Bikes development? What's the biggest epiphany of like, oh, I didn't realize going indie would be like this?
Well, it's quite hard.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot to do because there's just two of us on our company, Foam Sword, which is myself and my buddy Mu, who worked on the original LittleBigPlanet. You will have seen his face as well in that intro.
Okay.
And then we're also collaborating with a friend, Kenny, who did the audio, was head of audio for LittleBigPlanet and for Tearaway as well. So work with him a lot as well. So it's good to have, some of those buddies from, that time that you've built up a working process with. But yeah, I guess just learning about, even though on like a larger but still kind of indie team, you're wearing a lot of hats. I've just lost count of how many hats I have to wear now. It's like I'm kind of happy when I just get to do a tiny bit of art, like just at the end of the day, because I'm busy doing level design and game design and story and just so many different areas. It's a lot of jumping around.
And is this what you wanted? Is you wanted to rotate through a million different hats? Is that the adventure you were hoping for?
As we're talking, they're going to be sliding in. Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, it was definitely something I wanted to do to like level up on my like craftsmanship a bit. I felt that with Tearaway, as I've been more like sort of director role, like leading the project, I felt that I hadn't like drawn that much for a long time. I was still managing to still had to keep my hands dirty like the whole time, but wasn't able to like necessarily just like focus in on like I'm just going to make this part of the game exactly in a certain way. I'm not saying it would be like better or worse. It's just nice sometimes to just lose yourself in the world that you're building.
Yeah.
So that's been fun. That's definitely been fun.
What's because how long have you been working on Knights and Bikes?
So we did a Kickstarter. God, I'm losing track of time, as our backers will realise, because we're quite. Yeah, sorry.
It was a while ago.
Yeah, I think we did the Kickstarter it'll be 3 years ago next February.
All right, gotcha. And so since you
2.5 years ago.
All right, since you're involved in like every aspect of this game at this point, what takes longer than people would realize?
Oh,
is it the art? Is it the level design? Is it just the business stuff? Like what's taking up a majority of that time? Do you think?
I think level design.
Really?
Yeah.
Like that just comes down to iteration.
Yeah, I think it's also when you're trying to, you end up having to do like a lot of iterative processes because you might block out a level, it might seem okay, then you start putting the art in, then you realize, oh, well, there isn't really enough, the pacing isn't quite right, or you're not really getting to like show off with a certain visuals, so then you rework the level to then show the art off more, and then you start putting the combat in, but there's not quite enough space for those, and you're just constantly like, it's not so much juggling plates as just moving little sort of quality bars up all the time in different areas.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't think you can necessarily break it down into different like disciplines anyway, because like where does art or level design, like where do they meet? There's a lot of crossover.
Yeah.
And that was something that was so important. The team at Molecule was just making sure there was like great integration all the time. That like Kareem was always talking. It's kind of a failure if you just make a white box level and then you just just make it pretty at the end by sticking the art on. It needs to be integrated. You can't be making a level that's going to be a factory, but all the shapes are completely the wrong. They're not giving the right sort of like vibe.
Right.
So
yeah, I get it.
A lot of iteration. Yeah.
Do you feel like you're?
I mean, just.
I was going to say, do you feel like you're in a race to the finish with Vita Molecule about Dreams versus Knights and Bikes, which is going to get out the door first?
Well, yeah, we're cycling along beside each other as always.
Friendly waving, as only you guys would. I totally get it. Have you had any revelations about your time at Vita Molecule now that you're outside of the game? When you look back at that studio, things you appreciate more, underappreciated aspects of what has been built up there?
I think, yeah. I mean, it's just the relationships that build up over time, just the amount of experience everyone has. I mean, these aren't like revelations. I've always known that, but
Yeah.
a studio is always its people and the relationships in those people, and that's where the real magic like forms. I mean, we often talked about the metaphors of like jamming, like you're in a band at Molecule, and I mean, I think that's so true of just someone just playing something and then someone else going, oh, I like that, and then they add to it, and then you start taking a slightly different direction, and it nobody's like too precious about their work. Just you're just all creating together and all being able to celebrate in the successes, and just try and pull yourself out of the out of those moments where things aren't just quite coming together quite as naturally.
Yeah. So during that jam session, was it tough to decide to leave? I mean, it was years ago now, but I'd imagine that'd be a tough call, especially as people were building up at that point after Tearaway to Dreams, which is maybe the most exciting project and so bizarre. What was that decision like for you?
I mean, it's kind of quite a sort of mundane logistics kind of decision. I mean, it's very hard to move away, but at the same time, I live because I don't live in Guildford at all. I'm way away, so I had a 3-hour journey every day to go to the studio for 10 years, and I started adding up all of those hours, and it's like, wow. So that was kind of taking a toll on me, and I think after finishing a big project, because Tearaway, the two Tearaways together were like 5 years, so that was quite a chunk of time that I'd really been sort of. I mean, I was a little bit kind of burned out and tired, so it was just feeling like it would be nice to take some time out, sort of have like a sort of like extended sabbatical from studio life, and like just chill out with my sketchbooks and pens, and have a couple of friends to like chat to, and not go completely crazy on my own, but just have a not exactly like have a chill time, but just not so much like traveling and commuting and those things.
Looking back on Tearaway in general, which version do you think found a bigger audience? Do you think the Vita version or the PS4 version?
I think the PS4 version must have found a bigger audience.
Yeah?
Yeah. Well, just because, I've heard that there's one or two more PS4s than there are Vitas. I know they're neck and neck, but...
was that stressful during that period to try and get eyeballs and gamers' hands on the Vita to play Tearaway? Like, hey, it's a great game. If you would just buy this system, I know there's not much on it, but please.
Yeah, I mean, I have so much love for that console. I mean, we saw the console before it even like properly existed, and even though it was just a prototype, it had the back touch on it, and I just fell in love with that. I mean, it's just such a wacky, cool hardware feature. You just don't see things like that so much these days. Everyone's playing it very, very conservatively with, controllers.
Yeah.
So it was really fun to just like, what would happen if I pushed on the back? Could I make my finger like appear in a game world? That'd be amazing. And that's how that project kind of got greenlit. But thanks to lots of support from the Molecules. But I mean, I think the Vita was just a magical piece of kit. I mean, I think it could have done with, I guess, similar to what's happened with VR, where there's lots and lots of like small but very polished VR experiences that really show off VR that have been put out on PS4. I think it'd be really cool if there'd been like lots of smaller games for Vita that really showed off crazy stuff you could do with the back touch.
Right.
I guess there weren't quite so many like sort of AAA, well, like whatever the crossover between sort of AAA and indie is, the sort of like super indie teams.
Right.
I feel that people could like really have pushed it a lot.
You know what needs to happen
If they,
is Molecule needs to port Dreams to the Vita at this point, just to finally blossom that library once more. I think it's a natural solution.
that's the big announcement. It's only coming to.
What do you think of that? Would you like to? Would you like to? Would you want to officially say goodbye to the Vita now that it seems like it's its swan song? I'll let you have the floor if you have any closing message for the Vita specifically, talking to the hardware.
Oh, I don't know. I'm feeling a bit tearful. It's very sad to think of that. Yeah, I guess mine's quite dusty, but yeah. No, I think well, it really tried. It really did some amazing things on the hardware and had some great games. And I like to think that it's helped the Switch be such a success as well.
Yeah, that's a lovely eulogy. Saying you really tried, and another system did well because of you. Thank you so much.
Hey,
that's awesome. LittleBigPlanet, real quick, just to jump back in there. You're involved in the aesthetics, the art, a lot of the direction of LittleBigPlanet 1 and 2, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I was sort of mostly based on the aesthetics and the vibes of it. Like picking some of the music tracks that were very iconic and cutting the trailers and logos and box art and things like that. And then getting into more like concept art and that I could help out really.
The idea of choosing the music for LittleBigPlanet, that soundtrack and that first one especially, is so unbelievably good. I feel like, even if it's not in a game, Media Molecule or you should just make like a LittleBigPlanet inspired playlist and just update it every 6 months or something and send it out into the world, because I think the world could just use a nice relaxing time to listen to a soundtrack like LittleBigPlanet's. Was that a fun process? Is it you that's then sending emails out to the Go team to try and rope that stuff up, or how does it happen?
Well, I mean, we were very lucky to we had Kenny like working on the audio sound and like leading that side, and then having the might of Sony to reach out to these bands and get the appropriate things signed off and what have you. It was funny. I remember fairly soon after we put out the LittleBigPlanet trailer, and the Go Team track just became so synonymous with the game. Yeah. And then Microsoft had put out an ad which used the Go Team as well. And it went out on YouTube, and just all the comments were like, "Why are you using the LittleBigPlanet soundtrack? Leave it."
Completely ripped them off.
Yeah.
I wish they would have used that song with the Quran in it. It really would have gone places as well. Do you want to tell that saga? Is an interesting story to get out there?
I probably shouldn't tell that story.
Okay. Stressful time for you?
It was quite stressful. Yeah, we were at the launch party when we found out that every copy of the disc was going to get recorded due to the soundtrack. So that was a strange mixed emotions that night.
It's just because you feel like you're at the finish line.
The game shipped. Oh, it's not going anywhere. It's all coming back again.
Back to the office one more time. Oh my God! But hey, it got out there. It turned around quick enough, man. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say? Anything else about Knights and Bikes you want to get out there?
No, I mean, it's just like really, really pleased with how it's coming along. We're getting pretty close now. It's on the like polish stages. Starting to put versions of the game out for our Kickstarter backers at like some of the higher tiers. So getting their feedback, the backers have been really incredible, really patient, and it's going to be really interesting to hear what they're feeling about it. But yeah, I mean, it's just cool just seeing our little sort of Goonies-inspired, Earthbound video game about two girls on their bikes cycling around having fun, and just the fact we've been able to make it with such a tiny team is, it's been a really good ride.
Yeah, and if you're watching or listening to this, I really recommend, you can look at screenshots and they look great, but see that game in motion, especially like playing it at E3 this year, just cemented in like, it looks and feels so good. I'm really looking forward to it. So congratulations to you and the team, guys. You're really pulling that off.
Yeah, thank you.
That was just a clip from a larger show called The Game Informer Show. You can find it on iTunes, Google Play, or GameInformer.com. We take the fun opportunities and exclusive information from Game Informer magazine and boil it into a show that airs every Thursday with exclusive cover story information, developer interviews, a lot of fun stuff. So come love games with us.